British Army paratroopers recreating a drop into the fields of Normandy today as World War II veterans gather in France for the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, June 6th, 1944. And tomorrow marks that anniversary, and there will be somber ceremonies there at Normandy.
But local veterans from that era will also watch and reflect on war and its sacrifices. WLWT News 5's John London here in studio with us to share the story of one local veteran who he talked with today. Hi there.
Yeah, and Cherie, someone who considers himself lucky that he wasn't a part of D-Day, of course, because the heavy cost he found out about the turning point in that war. He found out about it later in the war.
He is spry, sharp, 102, and he doesn't look it.
I get that all the time. They want to know what my secret is.
Army veteran Dennis Shoney, among the oldest living survivors of World War II. He was 22 when he went in, part of Tom Brokaw's Greatest Generation, the ones who preserve freedom for the rest of us.
I didn't know what to think, to tell you the truth. I didn't know what lied ahead of me, you know. I didn't know if I'd come back or not.
He was not part of the D-Day landing. He was General Douglas MacArthur's company clerk, which took him from Australia to the Philippines, where some of the bloodiest battles were fought. In his Blue Ash apartment today, he spoke with us about the respect he has for the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
It seemed like a real brave operation to storm the beach like they did.
The youngest veterans of that day are in their 90s. Staff Sergeant Shoney is part of the dwindling few on the high end of the World War II spectrum.
That's why I believe it's our job as the younger generation, not much younger, but the younger generation, to make sure that his story is told and his life isn't for naught.
His Army medals are framed on the wall. Here he is laying a wreath at this year's Memorial Day ceremony in Blue Ash. Listening to the two of them today, worries about war clouds returning to Europe were top of mind.
That war between Russia and Ukraine really concerns me. I think it's going to lead into something more. We're going to get involved in it.
This retired pharmacist, family man from Cheviot, hopes not, but believes it's possible.
Dennis Shoney, who turns 103 in October, also believes America's bond with Europe is still strong. As for his secret to longevity, he says staying active. He was still playing golf at age 99.
Oh my God.
John,
out there on a regular basis at 99.
What a great guy. And speaking of tomorrow, the vintage footage from World War II and that D-Day is chilling. Have you ever seen the movie Saving Private Ryan?
Oh, yeah.
My dad was a World War II vet. When he saw the movie, he sat in the back and cried for a while after the movie. He told me that scene is the most realistic war scene he has ever watched on film. And I think if people at least watch that, it'll remind them what those men had to deal with that day.
Absolutely. It's a powerful movie.
Yeah.
And talking to someone, now he wasn't at D-Day, but he understands it. He knows he fought in the war. And so I would encourage people to talk to a veteran from World War II. There aren't many left.
No.
And while they are here, to hear their stories, it's worthwhile.
Well, we appreciate his insight and, of course, him also looking back on what happened 80 years ago. John, thanks so much.